While some online bullion dealers continue to charge $4 over spot for U.S. Mint Silver Eagles, SD Bullion is selling 2016 Silver Eagles for just $2.29 over spot for any quantity. Again, that's just $2.29 over spot for any quantity. If you haven't joined over 25,000 new customers by making the switch to SD Bullion, what are you waiting for? You could save hundreds or even thousands of dollars on your next order. SD Bullion, the lowest prices, period.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with FinanceAndLiberty.com, and back with us today is Bix Weir from RoadToRuta.com. Bix, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, no problem. It's been a crazy summer, and there's lots to talk about.
Definitely, and I'd like to discuss first about the GOP convention. I know in the past you had talked about how you were hoping for Trump to pick Sanders as VP to kind of unify the country. But now as we're seeing the GOP convention happen, Trump is officially nominated but picked Mike Pence as VP. Did you want to discuss your initial thoughts on all this?
Sure. I mean, the Trump-Sanders ticket was a long shot, but I believe it was necessary to unify the country going forward. But clearly it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So we are not looking at a united America once this election takes place. And we're not only not looking at uniting, but we're looking at fighting each other. And we're seeing that play out in the streets now between, the police getting shot, the Black Lives Matter guys getting shot, all this chaos in Europe. I mean, we are on the brink of pure chaos where total control is lost. Turkey's pseudo coup, nobody really knows if it was real or not, but all it does is add more chaos. So without a united America, we're not looking like we can, I don't think we'll be able to survive this without some kind of civil uprising. And, they're trying to take away guns, which usually loads people up with guns and ammunition. It really does look like it's turning into a not so much a war of rhetoric, but a war of bullets and guns, and that's not good to try to live through.
Definitely, and I guess I know recently you've talked about how there's these riots going on, and that if the collapse happens right now, then the collapse will be blamed on the rioters. Did you want to discuss about this?
Well, the collapse is coming. Everybody knows it. They've been holding up the markets, trying to support it through this, at least the beginning of the election process. But just like in 2008, they're gonna let it crash. And I'm hoping August, September. There are lots of signs that it is crashing now with the Brexit losses that are taking place. Just today they announced that HSBC foreign exchange trader got actually arrested, which is unheard of. And then yesterday, Deutsche Bank was put on the watch list, negative watch. So they're going to be downgraded soon, which just triggers even more of their foreign exchange derivatives, which I think they had some gigantic losses from the Brexit. We should know. I believe they announced earnings at the end of the month, the end of July. So, yeah, everything's happening, everything's lining up. A lot of people don't see it because they keep the stock market, rigged at all-time highs, and they keep gold and silver, in check for the most part. So, yeah, it's all happening. It's just happening slower, and with this very divisive election coming up. Either side that wins, the other side is going to go nuclear, and hopefully not literally nuclear, although there's talk about that coming out of North Korea. But this is the life we have built for ourselves, and there's really not many people we can blame except ourselves, because we allow this all to happen, and we allow the rigging to go on, and we allow the taking of our freedoms from us without any, even getting off the couch. So we're going to get what we deserve, and hopefully we'll, survive it, or at least most of us will survive it in the end.
Now, you talk about the need for America to unify. I guess, do you see any possibility of this happening now? And what are some ways that, our viewers can help this happen?
I don't see any way. I mean, the only way I threw out there was a Hail Mary shot of a Trump-Sanders ticket. Now there is no way. I mean, if if either side wins, then the other side is going to be, feel disenfranchised and pissed off, and out come the guns. I mean, literally, especially if Trump wins, and it's looking like the Republicans have the upper hand, because at any moment they can file more charges against Clinton for lying to Congress. That's how they usually get people anyway, is not the deed, because it's so hard to prove, but it's the fact that they lied about it. And so, will Clinton win if she's on trial for lying to Congress? I don't think so. I think Bernie Sanders actually might even still have a shot at this if they take Clinton out, maybe even during the Democratic convention. I hear there's a lot of, as messy as the Republican convention has been, I hear the Democratic convention is going to be 10 times worse. So we'll just wait and see what happens there.
Now, you were talking about how it seems like the economy might be starting to collapse right now. Now, I guess to the average person, it looks like, the stock market is at an all-time high. I mean, did you want to discuss a little bit about this? What are some of the other reasons you see that the economy looks so fragile right now? Because, like I said, to the average person, the stock market's at an all-time high. It seems like everything's going fine.
Well, those are two. I mean, they try to place the price of the stock market equals the economy, and they've been trying to put that in everybody's head since day one. So they rig the price of the stock market high, and then everybody says, well, the stock market's doing well, that means I'm doing well, even though most people are not doing well. Other signs are, look at real estate market. The high-end real estate market has been absolutely destroyed, and it's going nowhere from here. Middle and lower it's wobbling now, but it's also going down. And once this economic bump hits, you're going to see a free fall of those, and everybody and their mother thinks the wealth of their future is in their house. So I don't see that turning out well at all. And as the banks collapse, so collapses the housing market, because nobody can get money to buy houses. It's 100% contingent on cheap money. So if the banks go down and aren't lending, like happened in 2008, you can see another housing crash. So it all is going to happen very fast, and it doesn't take the market riggers or the powers to be. It doesn't take them to do anything other than to remove the artificial support. And we right now have artificial support on the stock market, on the bond market, on the U.S. dollar. Everything's traded off derivatives now and run out of the computers of the Fed and the Treasury. So there's nothing that's real. And if you look at Europe's falling apart. Turkey literally is in coup mode. France is right around the corner. Italy, Spain, Greece, the EU is falling apart. I mean, the only thing that people are pointing at is the stock market, and the stock market's rigged. So, you can hold up a sign and say everything's rosy. It doesn't really mean that it is rosy.
Now, what about the gold and silver markets? I know we've been seeing gold and silver move higher recently. That might be, to some people, it looks like, oh, maybe that's a sign that the economy is actually not doing well. So it seems like kind of strange that the stock market and gold and silver are going up at the same time. But what is your perspective? Are those just more rigged markets?
Oh, of course. And the stock market going up doesn't mean people go in and buy silver. I mean, the silver market going up or the gold market going up. It means they change the derivatives, how the derivatives are calculated. And because, as you know, over, at least on the COMEX, over 100 billion ounces are traded every year of electronic silver. It's got nothing to do with physical silver. So it's very confusing to most people, because they look at the price of silver that they show you on MSNBC and Kitco, and they believe that's the real price. That's the fair market value of silver. When in actuality, over 500 billion ounces of electronic silver make up that price. It's got nothing at all to do with the physical silver. So they can move it up, they can move it down, they can move it to zero if they wanted. They could move it to $1 million an ounce, and all this is done with the click of a mouse, out of the basement of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve out in New York and some of the bullion banks. It's all rigged all the time, so there's nothing to do except sit and wait with physical on the sidelines.
And you've talked about before how once this collapse eventually happens, the world will begin to understand the need for trust and scarcity, and then turn to silver, gold, and Bitcoin to save themselves from the collapse. Did you want to discuss a little bit about this?
Well, they'll try to be getting into silver, gold, and Bitcoin. But remember, for any market you take, you need a willing buyer and a willing seller. When this all starts to collapse, you're going to see central banks around the world printing money to try to buy gold, silver, and Bitcoin, including your average Joe, and the sellers will absolutely disappear overnight. It really will be a unique situation in that it won't be the fear, or it won't be the desire to make money off Bitcoin or silver or gold. It will be the fear of holding these dollars that are collapsing before your very eyes. As the banks go, so go all the access to any kind of funds you have at those banks. So you have Deutsche Bank goes down, the largest derivative holder in the world that just got downgraded or is about to be downgraded by S&P. You can pretty much say, well, that's probably the biggest too big to fail bank out there. And there's no one in Europe who can fix that problem. And there's no one in the United States who can fix that problem, not even the Fed. I mean, we're talking 75 trillion or 70 trillion right now in derivatives that they're counterparty to. So that means, how many trillions does JP Morgan have in that counterparty? Maybe 5 or 10 of the Deutsche Bank, and Bank of America has 10, and it's spread out between these banks. The reason they call them too big to fail is that if they fail, they take down the entire system.
Now, I'd like to turn our focus now to viewers' questions. Mike is wanting to know, have you given much thought to the prospect of central banks issuing their own digital Bitcoin-like currencies in the future?
That would be great if they are Bitcoin-like. But that's the thing, is central banks, they don't run off of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is about trust. Everybody in the system has to trust that every transaction, has to approve every transaction that goes through, and it's all visible. With the banking system, it's the complete opposite. They are in charge of these things. Yes, a central bank or a bullion bank or a Joe Schmo with a computer can invent a new cryptocurrency, and that's fine and dandy. As long as it's trustworthy, it will be accepted to some extent, although Bitcoin has the first mover advantage and there's billions of dollars going into the infrastructure. So yeah, a central bank, sure, they can create anything they want. Remember, after the crash, no one's going to trust central banks most of all. So if they create a type of Bitcoin that is completely trustworthy without them even being there, yeah, that might have some inroads, but they're way behind the curve on that. I don't see them doing that. I see that trust going away, so it won't be central banks who will be controlling the monetary system after this crash.
Now, still on the topic of Bitcoin, this viewer is wanting to know, is the gold to Bitcoin ratio going to be a major new index to look at? What if we fixed or backed Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency with gold?
I think the question is missing the whole point. There is no backing to gold. There is no backing to Bitcoin. Gold is gold. It has been accepted as a world's reserve currency for thousands of years. Countries that try to back their currencies with gold, unless it's fully redeemable, it is ridiculous, because all it does is give them power to abuse a true gold standard, a gold coin standard, where you use gold as money and there are no derivatives of gold. So there's no need for backing for Bitcoin. If you understand the program, the protocol, how it works, it's very limited in the amount of coins that can ever be made at 21 million. And they estimate like in the late 2030s, the last coin will be mined, or basically they'll hit that 21 million. And then from then on, you have no more Bitcoin being mined. And that's even a better thing, because that increases the scarcity, because it's all about scarcity. One of the biggest problems right now with gold, I believe, and a lot of my friends at GATA don't believe this, but I believe there's a lot more gold available than the central bankers are telling us. And central bankers meaning, the Jeffrey Christians of the world, GFMS of the world, and the World Gold Council. All those people are the ones who decided how much gold there is to tell people that there is in the world. And I think they're lying through their teeth. I think there's a lot more gold. That doesn't mean it's less valuable. I think gold should be up at $10,000, maybe $20,000 right now, but it's rigged also with the derivatives, the computers and derivatives. So yeah, there's an issue with gold as far as scarcity. It is scarce, but we don't know how scarce. So after this crash, there'll have to be some kind of a system of weights and measures set up so that we can find out how much gold is really out there and how much can be used as in the new monetary system.
Now, actually, one viewer is wanting to know just about that, how you were saying there's a lot of gold and it's not actually as scarce as a lot of people think. Bruce is wanting to know if there is as much gold as you claim in Chocolate Mountain and gold not allocated on government books, what makes it so valuable and precious then? Is it not thus a game of artificial scarcity like the oil game?
No, because gold is not freely traded. Gold derivatives are traded. Gold is not traded. Gold is still very scarce, but in comparison to the amount of manipulation and the amount of electronic money that's created out of thin air, gold in dollar terms or in fiat money terms should be much higher. So yes, there is a lot more gold, maybe 10 times or 20 times more gold than they say, but at the same time, in relation to fiat money, it should be a lot higher in the dollar pricing that we see on the COMEX and the LBMA. And yeah, it does have a scarcity and it does have value. It just, we don't know what those ratios will be until we get a full accounting of, one, how much real gold is out there, and two, how much fiat money is out there. Because I don't think that the numbers they tell us are real either. If you have a computer and you're sitting in the treasurer of the Fed, you can create trillions of dollars at the click of a mouse and not tell a soul about it. That's the that's the beauty of fiat money and electronic money is you don't need to tell anybody about what they're doing in the current system.
Now moving on here, this viewer is wanting to know, did you want to discuss a little bit about who's winning right now? I mean, do you think the good guys or bad guys are doing better right now?
Well, I think the good guys are winning, and you can tell by the things that are happening in front of people's consciousness and that can be viewed by people. For example, today the HSBC, the foreign exchange trader that got arrested, that wouldn't have happened if the bad guys were winning. The downgrade of Deutsche Bank, the looming downgrade, that would not even be close to happening if the bad guys were winning. Deutsche Bank would be at $100 a share, and it's at 14. And the dragging through the coals of Hillary Clinton, even though they didn't press charges against her for all the crimes that she did, they exposed all the crimes, and everybody's like, oh my God, she did all this, and she got away with it. That stuff would be swept under the rug, back in the Clinton Whitewater. I mean, you can go back with the Clintons time and time again, they get away with it, but it's not dragged in front of the public like it is now. One of the bigger things that just happened was the release of the 28 pages from the 9/11 Commission report. The press said, oh yeah, my goodness, it looks like the Saudis were involved. Well, that report that's not why they were hiding the report. The reporter said that the ambassador, Prince Bandar Sultan, or whatever his full name is, was the one funding these some of the hijackers. Well, Prince Bandar, they called him Bandar Bush. He was in the White House more than any other person, hanging out with George Bush Jr., who's their best friends. He'd go to Bush's ranch all the time. Now, how would that look if your best friend was the one funding the hijackers? That's why they hid that report, but nobody's talking about that. That Bandar Bush, I call him Bandar Bush because everybody in Washington called him Bandar Bush. The ambassador, Prince Bandar from Saudi Arabia, directly funded two of the hijackers directly, him and his wife. They paid for them. They bought their air, simulation flight lessons. Just horrible stuff, and nobody's talking about it. All they say is, yes, it looks like the Saudis were involved. Well, why aren't we chasing these guys down and sticking them in jail? Why doesn't Prince Bandar go to jail? Why doesn't George Bush Jr. and Sr., who were both involved, heavily with Prince Bandar. Why aren't they questioned about their knowledge of what happened? Because 2 days later, after 9/11, Prince Bandar was at the White House on the Truman balcony smoking cigars with Bush as over 100 Saudi, what were they? They call them Saudi diplomats, but 25 of them were relatives of Osama bin Laden, were flown out on a no-fly, and we still had the no-fly zone going over the United States. Why isn't that talked about? Why isn't that prosecuted? Why aren't people like screaming and knocking down the walls of the Bush compound down in Texas? We need this. Those are the signs that this thing is breaking down, that they're exposing this type of stuff and people are starting to question it. Even if they're not screaming about it, it's out there.
Diane wants to know, how will the inclusion of the yuan into the SDR currency basket affect the others in the basket, as well as the prices of gold and silver?
Well, currency baskets were kind of invented back in the early 70s by, I forgot the guy's name, but they're basically, it's how they trade against each other. They're all fiat currencies. Whether or not, if the system keeps going as rigged as it is into the future, and the yuan is added to the other manipulated currencies in the basket, then it's game on as usual, and they just keep going. And Paul Volcker's the guy who invented currency trading in the 70s. But if the system keeps going on the derivative side, I mean, all currencies are controlled by derivatives. They're not controlled by the trillions of dollars that are bonds or that are printed every day. It's all on derivatives leveraged 100 times. So the game goes on the way the game goes on. And will the United States lose its dominance if the yuan is added? Well, the U.S. can end this game with a blink of an eye, just shutting down the derivative game. But we don't, because we're going to play it right to the very end, soak up all the benefits. And right now we're kind of getting to the end of the benefits. I think it's the yuan being added, or even talked about being added, is a great sign that things are about to change.
Now, this last viewer question is, if this debt cannot be paid back, such that a global debt default will ensue, leading to an inevitable reset, is there an outside chance we can somehow avoid a catastrophic global collapse? Is unity the answer?
Well, first of all, debt is kind of, it's a theoretical thing. When we pay off debt with other debt. The United States saying that, we got 19 or 20 trillion dollars in debt. Well, the Congress can make one coin worth $20 trillion and pay off the debt. And that's how easy it is for that debt to disappear. People have known this for a long, long time. I think it was Connolly, he was a U.S. Treasury Secretary back in the 70s, went to Europe and said, hey, the dollar may be our currency, but it's your problem. It's a great line, because it's true. I mean, there's nothing that stops U.S. Congress from saying, okay, with the signing of a pen, we're going to create a coin. We're going to tell the U.S. Mint to create a $20 trillion coin. We're going to pay back all our debt and be done with it. And voila, no more debt. And that's the con game that is the debt-based money. So no country has ever paid off debt in the history of money, of debt-based money. And nobody ever plans to. They talk about it all the time, and we'll continue to talk about balancing budgets and all that. But you don't have to. You're in control of the printing press. You can print as much or as little as you want. And 99% of the time, when people vote, they're going to vote for more money for them. So and as far as we be able to orchestrate a smooth landing out of this? I don't think so. Because one person's debt is another person's asset. And that's going to be a problem when these banks start crashing. They're going to say, well, we own your house and all that. And the depositors are going to be saying, what do you mean? You think you're going to take my deposit and then, lose my deposit and then claim ownership of my house? No way. I'm not going to stand for it. and you get enough people, banking is funny because if it's a decent amount of defaults, the banks are like, they have the power. If it's the whole country defaulting, they have no power. And that's where we're kind of getting. These banks are going to default, and they're going to have no power at all. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people who run them are probably going to end up in jail.
All right. Well, Bix Weir, thank you so much for joining us today. I guess before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers, for our new viewers who haven't, heard our interviews before, did you want to share with the viewers, what is the best way to prepare going forward for this collapse?
Get yourself some food, some water, some protection, band with your neighbors, and on the financial side, get some gold, physical gold in your hands, mainly physical silver in your hands. And every day I increase my allocation of physical Bitcoin. Physical Bitcoin meaning you print out your private address and public address, and you keep it in your own possession so that it's not on the internet and not kept with any online wallet company. That's really all you can do right now if you haven't done a lot. And then just, I like to say, pretend you're going to, shut your doors and stay at home for a week. What would you need as far as food and power and water and things like that? So, yeah, do a lot of research. If you haven't, most of our listeners have done the research and are at least kind of prepared. But if you haven't, you got to do a crash course because things are coming down the pike really quickly.
All right. And where can our viewers find you if they're interested in learning more?
You can go to roadtoruta.com and sign up put your email in there, and you get free email blasts a few times every week and kind of update you on what's going on.
Great. Once again, thank you so much, Bix.
Thank you, Elijah.
This video was brought to you in part by ReluctantPreppers.com. Click here to watch Reluctant Prepper's latest interview with Craig Hemke. Will the perfect storm of Britain exiting the EU, combined with negative interest rates on sovereign bonds, further drive a stampede to propel gold and silver to record highs? Former stockbroker and founder of TFMetalsReport.com, Craig Hemke joins Reluctant Preppers to connect the dots between the dual forces of the Brexit vote causing a flight out of the fatally wounded euro, as well as negative interest rate bonds from Germany and other nations, forcing capital out of bonds, savings accounts, and CDs into secure stores of value. How can you protect yourself ahead of such turmoil in world currencies? Don't miss this interview.